A bill passed by New York's lawmakers could change how daily fantasy sports sites like DraftKings and FanDuel operate across the country. Under those new rules, no one under 18 can play. All advertising must show the accurate odds of winning, and operators will have to pay a 15% tax on gross revenue made in New York.
Big changes. Daily fantasy sports sites have come under fire in several states over whether they amount to illegal gambling. The games are based on the real-time performance of athletes on players' draft teams. Unlike traditional fantasy sports that take place over a season as well, these games are played daily or weekly. CBS does have an ownership stake of less than 1% in FanDuel. Meanwhile, Jason Robbins is co-founder and CEO of DraftKings and joins us at the table first on CBS This Morning. Jason, good morning to you.
Thank you for having me.
Governor Cuomo's office tells CBS This Morning now that the bill is being reviewed. What would it mean for DraftKings and really the industry now if it's signed into law?
Well, I'm hopeful that Governor Cuomo will decide to sign the bill into law. It would be a huge win. New York is a great market. It's a big market. It's a fantastic sports town. And it's also really been at the center of the debate on fantasy sports over the last 6 or 7 months. So having a positive outcome in New York that allows all the fantasy fans around the state, the millions of them, to play would be fantastic.
Now, you said you stayed up all night to watch. How late were you up and how nervous were you?
Well, I must admit, I never thought on a Friday night at 2 a.m. I'd be watching the live webcast from Albany of the New York State Senate, but I was. And, you know, it was definitely an interesting experience watching the whole process unfold and also, you know, hearing and knowing kind of behind the scenes some of the discussions that we had heard were taking place. And we were just all very excited. I was exhausted by the time.
Because what would it have meant for your company, Jason?
Well, what would it have meant if it hadn't passed? Mm-hmm. Well, not to be able to operate in New York would have been a big loss for us. New York is our second largest state. As I mentioned, it's a fantastic sports town. And I think a lot of eyes around the nation were on New York looking to see what the outcome would be for fantasy sports here.
Now, the New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman had officially ordered DraftKings and FanDuel to officially cease operations in New York, saying that you were violating gambling rules. How much money did you spend lobbying to get this bill passed?
Honestly, I don't know how much, but there were a lot of great people that helped. Well, I don't know.
Tens of millions?
Yeah, no, not tens of millions. It's a lot less than that. But I think
$2?
More than that.
Well, see, so Jason, you know how much you spent.
I know it's between 2 and tens of millions.
Yeah, you know how much you
But
spent.
I do think that the effort that was put in really was the same as a lot of what we're doing in other states. So, you know, at this point, I think we have a good understanding of what lawmakers are concerned about. A lot of the consumer protections are very similar in the New York bill as they are in other states. And New York is actually the 7th bill this year that a state has passed, clarifying that fantasy sports is legal, skillful activity.
The Attorney General has said he's still going to pursue legislation and claims about your past advertising. Meanwhile, it accounted for hundreds of millions of dollars for networks. Do you see the problems with your past advertising and perhaps specifically the questions of fraud?
I've been so focused on the legislation, I really haven't had time to think about it. I know I saw the Attorney General's comments the other day, and I think our first step's just going to be to sit down with his office, understand what their concerns are, and make sure that going forward we're addressing them. And I think that's the most important thing, is that everyone's comfortable.
Can you explain why this isn't gambling?
Yeah.
You know, I think the main reason that people point to why it's not gambling is that it's skill-based, and the nice thing about this law is that it actually clarifies that.
What's the skill?
So there's a lot of skill that goes into selecting your team. It's like you're the general manager of a team. Hence the term fantasy sports, is you get to kind of fantasy be the general manager, and you're assembling a team just like a typical general manager.
But skill, you're using data to make your choices, but you're still betting on the performance of athletes.
Well, therein lies the debate, but I think
but
the
it's
nice
a debate
thing
that's
is
still going to be. I mean, you could still face future legislation. The gambling is illegal under the New York State Constitution. If a consumer comes after you, you could still run headlong into that. It would go to a referendum. I mean, you could still be forced for years to not be able to transact business in the state of New York.
I don't think that's likely. There are a lot of really smart people, lawmakers, lawyers, that weighed in on the language of the bill, the text of the bill, and my understanding is that they thought about all those issues, and that they're, you know, if you look at the majority by which the state Senate and the state Assembly passed them, I think it shows that a vast majority of people are very comfortable that the bill is written correctly.
Well, to be continued for sure. It was a nice moment, I have to say, between him and Ellen in the green room, because we were talking. He goes, "Is this you?" This is you? And then what did you say, Jason?
My wife and my mother-in-law are big fans, so she was nice enough to sign a couple books for me, and I'm sure they'll be really
that's
happy
you.
to get that.
Nice to meet you.
She has a huge following, a huge
Yeah,
following.
so he gets good husband and good son-in-law points today because he was really on top of that, the women in your life. Thank you, Jason.